Fortnite Reload, Epic's newest addition to their metaverse. Reload has been widely praised by the community, being noted as a breath of fresh air, having only the best parts of each chapter's Lootpool, and having essentially everything we love about Fortnite in one singular game mode. But I think it's safe to say that this is now a permanent part of Fortnite, as it's been receiving pretty regular game-shifting updates and changes. And as such, I'm going to be talking about what Fortnite could do in the future and how Reload could evolve and improve for the better. So, without further ado, let's talk about how Fortnite should progress Reload. Starting with... Now, the map was actually one of the trickiest parts of this whole video, as we are trying to look for fan-favorite POIs, but while simultaneously trying to have them be an effective part of the map. So the first change to the map that came to mind was a POI or two that have a different biome. I was thinking maybe something like the Chapter 1 Season 5 Desert biome, or the Chapter 1 Season 6 Cube biome. But turns out there's already a concept for the Desert biome. And looking at this, I think the Desert biome would translate a lot better in contrast to the Cube biome. So we'll go with the Desert biome on the bottom left of the map. But now I want to actually move on to actual POIs. So obviously, since we have the Desert biome, we have to have Paradise Palms. And I think that's a given. But something I feel like I should note is that we don't have to replace every single POI, as I feel like we should keep some to have in contrast to newer locations that people are going to be less familiar with. But moving on, I feel like we should replace Sandy Sheets for Junk Junction. My reasoning behind this change? Well, I think the general location works for this POI. Yes, it is slightly bigger than Sandy Sheets, but I feel like that would honestly help with this POI and the general area surrounding it, as Sandy Sheets has one of the longest walks to another POI, and because of its smaller size, it doesn't have as much character, and it makes the walk seem even further. But if we were to replace it with Junk Junction, then I feel like it would make the walk seem significantly shorter. Plus, I feel like the POI would bring a lot more attention to the east side of the map, as it's had less interaction as opposed to the west side of the map. Plus, Junk Junction endgames would be quite interesting with all the debris to hide behind, and I feel like this POI would just give the map more character and would make it more recognizable. Next up, I'm going to be replacing Retail Row for Chapter 2's Frenzy Farm. But, except it's going to be a smaller version called Frenzy Field. The reasoning behind the selection is that I feel like it's common knowledge that at this point, basically every map has some sort of farm POI. And when I first booted up Reload, I noticed that this map doesn't have that staple in it. But the question here is why? Why have Frenzy Field when we can have something like Fatal Fields? Well, I just think that Frenzy Field would just operate better on the map with the general layout, just on a smaller scale, which yes, Fatal Fields does have a smaller size, but also a big reason for selecting Frenzy Field is because we want this map to be differentiated from Chapter 1's, as Reload is supposed to be the best aspects of multiple chapters. And the reality is that Frenzy Farms was praised and called one of the best POIs in Chapter 2, so that's why I'm replacing Retail Row with Frenzy Field. And the final location of today, I have Tomato Temple. Regarded as one of Chapter 1's best POIs due to its loot and general unique layout, I believe this would make a great addition to the Reload map. But with this POI, we would be removing Lone Lodge. But here's the upside, is that the Tomato Temple would still be surrounded by trees from the Lone Lodge. It's just that the actual cabins would be removed in place for the Tomato Temple. And that's my list for the POIs. And please let me know down in the comments below how you would improve the POIs. But without further ado, let's move on to... Now, I'm actually not going to be handling the Lootpool today. Rather, I have a very special guest to tackle the topic, that being Aggro. Take it away.
Now before I start, I want to say thank you to Pojo for having me on, and every single person out there that's watching this video better drop a sub to his channel. But with all that out of the way, let's get into how they can make the Lootpool better. Now really quickly, I do want to say that not all of these guns need to be in at the same time, obviously. I'm just saying they could rotate these in and out, and I think they would all fit the gameplay of this game mode. Starting off with the ARs, I think the burst AR needs to be in this game mode. I was honestly surprised when I saw everything else here for the ARs except for this one, because I feel like you can't have the base AR and then the heavy AR and then not include the burst. It just doesn't make sense to me. So this definitely needs to be added into the game as soon as possible. Such a satisfying weapon to get a kill with, and I really enjoy it overall. Next up I have the MK, which is probably my favorite AR, maybe just behind the burst. I love the scope of this weapon, I love the damage that it does, and overall it's just really fun to use. This is another fan favorite weapon, so I'm pretty surprised that it's not in this game mode, but I think eventually they'll definitely add it. Now the strike AR, even though it is from chapter 5, I think would fit this game mode really well too. I think exceptions can be made for the good chapter 5 weapons, so I could see this one being in the Lootpool. Lastly, I got the drum gun, another fan favorite weapon. I think people would love to see this in here, and I think the overpowered guns kind of fit this game mode because it is pretty forgiving and fast paced, so it makes sense that you have these very overpowered stuff because right after you kill that one, you can just come back, get a new gun, and run it back. Now for the shotguns, which is my favorite weapon to use in the entire game, the combat shotgun is an easy placement for me. I was surprised to find out this wasn't in the game already, but this is by far one of the perfect shotguns for reload. It has to be in there at some point. Now next up I have the charge shotgun. I do not like this gun at all, but I know a lot of people do, and I think it would also fit this game mode, so I'm gonna throw it up on this list, even though personally I think this gun is trash. A gun I don't think is trash though is the Havoc pump. This gun is super good. It's way better than the OG pump, way better than the Thunder pump, and I really would enjoy seeing it in here, especially with how sweaty this game mode is. Lastly, if they ever take out the tac, they need to add the Maven Auto to this game. I love the Maven Auto, not as much as the tac of course, but it's a close second for me. Now, I'm going to keep SMGs and pistols in the same category because I only really have 3 of them. First off, the tac pistol, one of the best guns they've ever added to this game. Super spammy, really fits the game mode with how fast paced it is, and like I said, you can have these overpowered guns because of how insanely forgiving this game mode really is. Continuing with the overpowered stuff, the machine SMG would go crazy in this game mode. Just a really busted weapon that's super fun to use, and I would love to see it in here. Lastly, I have another chapter 5 weapon, the burst SMG. I have a lot of fun with this gun, and I think this is one of the few that can be put in this Lootpool because this is kind of a breakaway from chapter 5, so I really don't think too many guns should carry over. Now for the explosives, I really want to see either the proximity grenade launcher or the sticky bomb grenade launcher, whatever it was called. Both of these weapons in my opinion are way better than the RPG because I think you have a lot more leisure with how you can play with them. And with how chaotic these guns are, I think they scream reload. I also have the Excalibur on here. I know this one's a little bit crazy, but with it being an explosive weapon, I think it could really fit reload style. But that just might be me having a bias there because I love the crazy weapons in Fortnite, which I don't think reload should have too much of, but I think the Excalibur could be an exception. Finally, for the heals they could add, this is the only part they're really falling on. For starters, I think this game mode could really benefit from some type of siphon, but on top of that, they really need to bring back Med Mist and Slurp Juice. Personally, the Chapter 401 because it was really overpowered and really fun to play with, and maybe even the Slurp Cannon. This thing was one of the best heals they added. I had a lot of fun with it, and I think again it fits reload style really well. They could even add something like the Campfire, and if we're speaking of traps, they really need to add the Bouncer and also the Launch Pad into this game as traps. I think a lot of people would enjoy that, and it would bring back a lot of that OG feeling if you added so much traps to the game. But that's really all I have for you guys, so I'm going to turn it back over to Pojo. I hope you guys enjoyed my segment, and let me know in the comments below what weapons you would want to see in this game mode.
Thank you, Aggro, for hopping on and breaking down the Lootpool, and make sure to go check out his channel. The link will be in the description. But now we'll be moving on to... Now, I've heard some people talking about vehicles in this game mode. And while I do see the potential, I just don't think it would translate well in Reload since, for starters, the map is so small. Traveling would be even easier than it was before. Plus, like Aggro said, if we have launch pads and bouncers, then there won't really be a need for vehicles. The only vehicle I can see working is a shopping cart and maybe the golf cart or hoverboard. But I just don't see it as a necessity at the moment. Something we do need, however, is trios. I know there's been a lot of talk as of late about trios, but this needs to happen as soon as possible. But something we don't need for Reload are seasons. I believe it won't make any sense if there were seasons. I think that Reload should just slowly gain more content like weapons and POIs, kind of like what they were doing currently. And not just put all the content in at once with a huge update, because then I feel like the game mode would get somewhat tiresome after a while. And finally, I believe that over time, Reload should shift away from Chapter 1 and slowly implement later chapters more and more, with weapons, items, POIs, and more, giving Reload more of an identity, rather than it being called Chapter 1 of Fortnite with a spin. Reload should have its own identity, rather than it dwelling in Chapter 1's shadow. as each chapter has pros and cons, but Reload should have the pros of every chapter implemented. Reload's purpose is to expand the metaverse and utilize past features of Fortnite chapters: fan favorite guns, fan favorite POIs, and fan favorite items. This mode is used to bring back players who left by having the best aspects of every chapter, but that's how I believe Fortnite Reload should progress. But now it's time for... Essentially, at the end of each of my long-form videos, I shout out a creator who I think is criminally underrated and deserves more attention from the algorithm. And today's creator is none other than my guy John of the Johns. John does locker tours and is starting to experiment with other content types, so if you'd go over there and show some love, then that would be greatly appreciated. Also, don't forget to join the Discord, and I also have a Twitter now, I guess, so if you want to check that out, then cool. Links for all of these things will be in the description. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and as always, have a lovely night.